So, I'm back, and in today's video, we're talking about a movie I am very excited to talk about because I was pretty shocked by this one. Last night at the AMC Scream Unseen, I got to check out Faces of Death early, and when I first saw the trailer for this movie, I was skeptical. In fact, I would say I didn't like the trailer. I thought the trailer looked very, very lame, very boring, very, low budget, not really a lot to talk about. I had known about Faces of Death for a long time, and I thought that it was going to be kind of cringe to bring Faces of Death back, but here we are, and I am very, very happy to say that this is one of the best movies we have gotten this year, and I am excited to talk about it. So, if you don't know, and you're new around here, or one or the other, I am on my journey to watch as many 2026 movies as I can get my hands on, and I like to talk about them here for you all to know what to expect from a movie before you walk into it. I have a track record of having pretty negative thoughts on a lot of movies in 2026. If you checked out my quarter one recap video from about a week ago now, you'd probably know that, but Faces of Death is another entry into the very short list of movies I really enjoyed in 2026, so let's just jump right into the review. Faces of Death, the 1978 movie, I believe, was a shock factor movie of a compilation of fake and real clips of death. And the reason that it was so shocking and so interesting is because it was banned in 48 countries, because even like the big publishers couldn't really tell if it was real or not. And it kind of drew this stigma around the movie where, because it was banned and it was hard to find and people would hide it underneath the like cash register, people who were way too young to be watching this movie would watch it as almost a rite of passage into the horror genre. And it's been heavily debated and is pretty much debunked in the last probably like 10 or 20 years that most of the stuff in the film is fake. And despite that, though, they kept cranking these out. The same guy who made the original would crank out, I think, 4 or 5 of them, and all of them are pretty poor. I have only seen the original, or at least moments from the original. I haven't sat down and watched the whole thing, but I know that most people do not like those original movies. And when I heard that they were bringing it back, at first my immediate thought was, if they just do the same thing as the original, it's going to be really boring, because we live in an internet culture where shock videos are kind of the thing now, and they're not really like shocking anymore. And my other thought was that maybe they were just going to make it something generic, and then it was going to lose all of the charm of at least being a thing that was kind of the original shock factor. And to my shock, it's neither of those. But one other thing I want to say is that I didn't like the trailer. I thought the trailer looked really boring. And going into the Screen Unseen, or the Scream Unseen, sorry, I was totally expecting it to be Exit 8. And then I realized that Exit 8 had a very limited theatrical release, and I was like, wait a second, this is going to be Faces of Death. I thought that as soon as I sat down to actually watch the movie, and I was sitting there, I was like, man, I don't think I'm going to like this movie. And it comes on, and from start to finish, I was extremely engaged. So let's start off with the negatives, because I don't have a lot of them to say. My only negative for pretty much this entire film is going to be some of the choices that the characters make at certain points, and even that is a very, very loose criticism. I think that there are a few distinct choices that characters make in terms of how they want to survive their encounters with the killer and other things that kind of change the movie. Although now I'm realizing that I need to backpedal because I'm missing something. Let's actually talk about what this movie's about, and then I'll get into the negatives. So, Faces of Death, the original, like I said, is kind of the original shock value movie. But here in this new 2026 movie, Faces of Death is an in-universe film that a real killer, or a killer in this film, is trying to replicate by killing real people in the same ways that people in Faces of Death were killed. So you have this real killer abducting and killing people, and this lady who works for the company that, like a social media company, and she handles like blocking and banning like shock videos and stuff like that on the internet that get flagged. She begins to get invested in this mystery because she had an accident happen to her that was kind of its own shock video, and that's kind of the story you're getting here. So she's invested in this killer, like this murderer plot, and has to solve it. And that ties into my negative. So we have this main lady and we have the killer, and I think neither of them are very good at what they do, but it kind of works in of itself to better the concept of the movie. I think some of the decision making that they make, both the killer and the main lady, can be questionable sometimes. Like one instance, the killer literally just goes into an apartment building in like a full killer getup, like straight up slasher villain getup, and it's very risky. And I get it that the killers, especially this guy who's obsessed with being internet famous, is not very smart. Like, or rather, he's other way around. He is overly smart and sometimes too cocky because of it. So I get that. I think that that makes sense, but it's just a little bit kind of strange of a choice. And it doesn't hinder the movie in any way in particular, but it's just odd that they chose to do it like that, I guess is the best way to put it. And similarly, some of the choices that the main character makes, even though she does make very smart choices in different instances, there are some parts where it's really frustrating because she gets overly angry at things sometimes, and that over anger is a little bit frustrating to watch. It's like one of those characters that you're rooting for, like pretty much all of the movie, and then they do one thing that's very frustrating. Good example, maybe like Star-Lord in Infinity War, like when he punches Thanos, and that's really frustrating, but at the end of the day, you can't really blame him for it because he's really angry and it's kind of justified. There's just moments like that, and I don't even know if it's fair for me to say that that's a negative with the movie because that kind of just ties into me caring about the characters, but being frustrated at something is never a good thing, so I'm gonna chalk it up to that. But I don't know, maybe somebody else didn't really feel that way about it. And there's also the instance of a few other characters that logically things the killer can do doesn't make sense. Like there's one instance where a lady is in a bathroom and being stalked by the killer, and the killer puts like a phone on the wall, but he also is in a completely different room, even though he's moving things in one room. And just the ability for him to be able to move between locations is very strange, considering that he's not a superhuman and there's never superhuman things in the film. It's not like it's Halloween, where Michael Myers is assumed to be having supernatural abilities. So there's just a lot of weird continuity things and like character choices that kind of stack up. But that's really the only big negative I have. Maybe my only other one would just be that this movie, like, the reason it's not 5 stars is because I don't think it's like the greatest movie ever made. But it's very solid. Let's get into the mix, stuff that I'm pretty mixed on, and this is the shortest category because there's nothing. There's nothing I'm mixed on in this movie. I have a very strong feeling about what I like. I have a very strong feeling about the one thing that I don't like, and there's nothing that I'm mixed on. I think this movie definitely has no super low points, and the one thing that I think is negative is like just a minor negative. So that's good. Nothing to put in the mixed category. And talking about the positives of this movie, there are a ton of them. So earlier this year in February, we got a film called Psycho Killer that had very promising trailer and marketing, as it was marketed as being written by the same guy who wrote Seven, one of the movies that a lot of people say is like one of the best of all time. And this movie, Faces of Death, is pretty much everything that I wanted that movie to be. This is a extremely meta take on not only the original Faces of Death, but on how horror movie like content and how like slasher movies and how real life serial killers and all of those things tie in together in such a unique bow in this film. And it really is like one of the better, general conspiracy killer movies that I've seen in a long time, because it doesn't rely on like religious imagery like something like Longlegs does, where he's doing all like the satanic rituals and stuff, and it's not reliant on any of that kind of stuff. It's totally just reliant on a crazy killer who's replicating a movie, and he's a movie buff. And it's funny because that's just like Scream, my favorite movie of all time, but it doesn't quite have the same elements of comedy as Scream. This movie significantly takes itself more seriously. And that works because all of the things that are supposed to be shocking work as shocking. All the things that are relatively emotional feel very grounded and realistic and work. And in general, I was very gripped by this movie from front to back. I thought this movie was pretty damn good. And that's shocking considering that a lot of, especially the horror that we've been getting this year, is pretty mediocre or even bad. And Faces of Death is a huge outlier in that sphere, up there with Send Help, where it's really solid, really, really good work. I don't have much else to say. I think if you have time this weekend, Faces of Death is a must-watch. It is going to be one of the movies that I will watch again probably over the summer, just so I can have that experience again and maybe if my opinion changes on it. But right now, this is a very, very solid horror entry in the year. It's the second best horror film to come out this year, unless I'm forgetting something other than Send Help. Yeah, this is a really solid movie. There will be other horror films that I think will top it. We've still got Obsession coming out later this year. Leviticus looks pretty good, other stuff like that. But right now, this is up there really high, and I really enjoyed Faces of Death. If you like Scream, if you like slasher films, if you like Seven, if you thought Psycho Killer was really bad and want something that's going to be a huge upgrade from that, this really gives you all of those things that you want. So definitely go check this one out this weekend. I would prefer it over Exit 8 just because Exit 8 is PG-13, and I have a feeling it's maybe not going to be as good because of that. But yeah, Faces of Death is a must-watch. Blew my expectations out of the water. Great film. Go and check it out. I gave this one a 4 out of 5 stars, translating to an 8 out of 10. Really enjoyed it. It could maybe move down to a 7 out of 10 by the end of the year if on rewatch I don't like it quite as much. I did that with 28 Years Later, The Bone Temple, where I was like, damn, that's a 9 out of 10 movie, and it moved down just a little bit on rewatch. But yeah, that's all I've got to say about Faces of Death. Go check it out, and I will see you all in the next one. Peace out.